All right, listen up, y'all.
Greetings, everybody. This is another episode of All Things Education Official. I'm your host and educator, Mr. Abdullah, trying to give you education from a black male educator's perspective. Today, we're going to talk about standardized testing and my personal take on it and why you need to potentially be opting out.
As we mentioned earlier, standardized testing holds teachers accountable, which is a good thing. However, this causes teachers to, quote, teach to the test. These standardized tests are not performance-based or authentic assessments. Real life isn't multiple choice. Another negative with standardized tests is that there is only one test opportunity. A student can have a bad day. And now our last section of standardized assessments, the ugly. Standardized testing has often brought out the worst in schools and teachers. Doctoring scores and coaching students during assessments has caused many educators to lose their jobs. Now, the more effort and attention that is spent on standardized testing, the less effort and time that is spent on other school activities. Schools cut recess and they cut other fun courses. Now, for the most part, standardized testing avoids using the words failing when disseminating their scores, but students will know when they are not meeting expectation.
All right. So I think that oftentimes I just give you both perspectives and then I go ahead and give you my take on it. But today I'm going to be very, very clear and transparent that I am not a fan of standardized testing. I know that standardized testing has been considered racially biased. It's been proven to be such, not to mention you find that there's so much education that's lacking because teachers are teaching to the test. And there are so many articles that talk about it. I'm going to go to the first article, which the U.S. News reports, and it's entitled, Why Opt Out of Standardized Testing? Opting out of standardized testing, what to know. And it says, under the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, public school students must take state standardized tests in mathematics and English language arts annually in grades 3 through 8 and once during high school. Let me put a pause on that. Let's be clear. As a parent, you're not mandated to have your child test. The schools, on the other hand, are mandated to test or they will lose funding. If they don't, they will be penalized. But you as a parent can write an email, send out a letter in which you would say, I don't want my child to test. And if they decide to give you any runaround, you can actually keep your kid at home for that day. It's just something that a lot of people, we don't talk about in education. We don't believe in testing as much as much of our districts do. A lot of teachers are saying it takes away from valuable education time. And as you can see in a couple of our articles, it does state that it takes away from the creativity. Right here, it says under the Why Opt Out of Standardized Testing section, it says in 2002, the No Child Left Behind Act mandated standardized testing in public schools across the country. The tests were a part of an effort to pinpoint subgroups of students who needed academic support and hold districts accountable for student performance. That may be what it says on paper, but what we never discuss is the fact that these schools that once these districts that already have academic deficits for whatever reason, social reasons, poverty, lack of interventions that could have helped remediate or help get these kids up to level. If they don't reach certain benchmarks or certain standards, they're ripe for takeover. So sometimes the state takes over the district. Sometimes principals and assistant principals are let go. Assistant superintendents are let go, especially if they're appointed by the state. So it sounds good, but the application of it is what's extremely questionable. In another article under the classroom, theclassroom.com, do standardized test scores factor in how much money a school will receive? Well, there are three things that it discusses as far as standardized testing is concerned. School funding. It says here, while schools don't have to administer annual achievement tests, they'll lose funding if they don't, is what I touched on earlier. So you can say, I don't want my child to test, but the school will still offer the test because they are mandated to do so. It says local school districts determine test content, but with the recent push toward Common Core standards, state tests are becoming more standardized. Also, teacher pay. Some local school districts have tied teacher performance to salary. If a teacher's students consistently perform well on standardized tests, she or he may become eligible for a pay raise. Now, they're not going to take money away from you, but it is an incentive to get your children up to speed. But what you'll find is that you'll have teachers now teaching strictly to the test so that they can acquire that bonus depending on whatever state that they're in. Third, you got benefits. Supporters of tying testing to funding argue that it rewards the best schools and best teachers and that it holds educators responsible for doing their job. That is where a lot of us have a bone of contention, where we have a lot of issues, because you may get a child in the 5th grade, let's say 6th grade, and you're doing the best you possibly can. But because that child had gaps in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, now you're being held accountable for not getting them up to 6th grade level, or at least according to the standardized test. That's extremely unfair, and it's a common practice, and it causes many of our teachers anxiety, and they pass that anxiety on to the children. Those children, they're anxious because you have teachers that are saying, you got to do well. You have pep rallies behind testing. You have dress down days, reward meals, ice cream socials just for testing, because you want children to do the best they possibly can. But what about those children who have test anxieties? Those things are real. Another drawback, as it says, many teachers, as well as the National Education Association, argue that teaching to the test limits classroom creativity and reduces students' opportunities to learn skills that aren't on the test. And this is where we always agree as teachers. The majority of the things that are on these tests are not taught in the curriculum. So we are literally teaching them information that they may not have gone over, they may not have even reached, or they may not even understand. So we're not educating, we're just teaching them to regurgitate points that we give them. Please understand this. If your child is in a school and they are pushing heavily standardized testing, you have rights as a parent. As a parent, you can email your principal and say, I wish for my child to sit out this test. You can write a letter if your principal is not allowing you to do this or attempting to say that you must come in. You can write a letter to the superintendent. Check out the laws in your state and your school district, because they do vary. But just be aware that you do not have to have your child in the school for testing. If you are adamant against testing because you know your child does poorly and it will definitely affect their self-esteem if they quote unquote do poorly, just keep your child at home. And that's my best recommendation as an educator. Many people say, don't tell people to do that. Well, I'm not here for the system. I'm here for the child. Once again, this is another episode of All Things Education Official. Please subscribe, comment, like, and share. Let people know what we're doing over here. We're giving education from a Black male educator's perspective, because we care about children, number 2, but our children first. You are dismissed.
Yeah! You are all expurgated. You are